Hello and welcome to Copic in the Craft Room. Michelle Houghton here, and we're going to do some coloring today on these adorable Paper Smooches stamps. This, I believe, is Garden Greetings. It's a kind of set of fun lettering. I want to just take a second to mention my blog, scrapweaver.com. Make sure to head over there as well to get all your information on Copic college events around the country. All right. Let's go ahead and start coloring. I've got some E9s that I'm going to use on two of the vases. I think they look like they might be kind of a pottery terracotta. And I realized two of them look more like they're clear vases, so I'm going to hold off on those. I'm going to start with an E9-3, and I'm going to just use that color on the highlight areas. So you're going to see I'm going to do a little more subtle coloring this time, not filling it in, just putting some colors down in smaller areas. So a little bit different coloring style today. I try the E95 next, but realize right away that it's almost an identical color. And since I'm just doing a real narrow range of colors on these, it's small areas. I don't need to use that E95. So I'm gonna jump up to E97. And that's going to help kind of bridge that gap. My goal is to kind of focus in on a light source from that left-hand side. So I'm leaving that highlight over to the right, trying to give that appearance of three-dimensional shapes. You also will notice right away that this is going a little slower than normal. I'm actually leaving this video in real time. I realized after recording it that I could get it, even with all of it in there, I could keep it at 12 minutes. And so it's a little bit longer than most of my normal ones, but you will see it in real time. So if you get bored, fast forward and it will go ahead and get you to the next section. So I do appreciate that some people really like to see a few of these in real times. Now I've jumped up to E99. This is the darkest color I'm going to use in this little set. It's a natural blending group. Excuse me. So going in again and looking for those deepest shadow areas. I'm not really worried about cast shadows on this image. I'm keeping it fairly simple. So just shadows. And as I'm coloring this area around this the letter E, I realize that as I stamp, some of those darker areas didn't get as dark as I want. So I will come back in at the very end and do some cleanup or darkening of those areas. I'm going back to my E97 to do some blending. Now this is a fairly decent jump between the E99 and the E97. So you're going to see I do spend some time working on that blend. So I'm doing some small circles, I'm doing some scrubbing, and I'm literally going over what I would call the seam where the two colors meet, the E95 and the E97, to really soften that E99 and bring it into that E97. So they really just kind of soften into each other, but it takes a little bit of work. So that's why, especially at this real time speed, you can see that. Now I've jumped all the way back down to my E93, which is my highlight color. The beauty of this is the E97 and the E93 actually blend together very easily. So this blend doesn't take near as long. And because that E97 is really wet, it makes it all the easier. So quick finish up. I'll have some cleanup to do on that E. I kind of bled out just a little bit and actually even accidentally worked my way out. The next is going to be all the greenery, and I'm using a set of YGs. This is YG's 9s as well. So again, very desaturated color, a lot of gray added. I'm going to start with these little cactuses all the way, little succulents all the way to the far right, and fill those in. So this time I'm going to go with a more basic blending technique, going ahead and filling it all the way in, and I go ahead and start capping my marker and then decide, now I'll go ahead and do all the greenery at once. These are all pretty small. So I've got a leaf on the two flowers, then I've got this little groupings of leaves, which I think something that I think is bamboo, I'm assuming. Obviously, I don't always know exactly what the artist intended, but this looks like bamboo to me, so that's what I'm going to assume it is. And then I do some debating about what shape this cactus is. This type of cactus actually comes in two forms, in that those sections kind of bulge outward like a pumpkin does, kind of going with the seams going inward. But it also has a version of it where it's kind of concave, or it pushes back in toward the cactus. So I started with the intent of it being concave or kind of curving in, and then you can see my pause there. That's me thinking, ooh, I'm not sure that that's right. I think I actually shaded that wrong, but I'm going to go with it. In this case, I'm just going to own it and say, this is what I intended. The shape is kind of a different shaped cactus, one that isn't your usual that would bulb outward. Now, I do know they exist. I've actually seen them, that they kind of curve inward and those seams or spines actually stick out. And that's what this guy is, but I'm sure that's not what the artist intended on this part. But I'm going with it. I'm saying that's what it is. So I've got a little bit of shading on both ends, but focusing that it would tip back inward on itself. If any of that made sense, congratulations. I've added some E97, the E95 and E97 on all of those areas with the little leaves. Most of that just happened way down at the tip. Now I'm skipping my mid-tone, going all the way back to my lightest, which is that E93. These colors blend together simply, really, really easy. So I can go back in my highlight areas. You can see I'm just kind of brushing over that area, and the other two colors just kind of melt into it, which is awesome. This is one of those natural blending groups that is super easy to work with. It is a unique color set. I don't pull these out very often, but when I do, I always fall in love with them again because they are so easy to work with. RV63 is next. This is one of my favorite little RV sets. I like the fact that it's not really a bubblegum pink. It has a little more of the violet in it, which I like that aspect. This is a color I really like. So RV63 to start, and I'm going to do my two flowers. I'm trying to do them a little bit differently, so they're not exactly the same. Obviously, they're very differently stylistically. RV66 is its partner, and you can see when I put these first few strokes on, it is a big jump between the two. This is one of those areas that if Copic were going to make some more colors, I sure wish they'd come back in and consider doing a few more of these RVs, something to go in and match up. Now you can see what happened there. I actually purposefully went over the center of that flower because it filled in some of that black that didn't stamp real clearly and solidly. And it just fills it in so it looks like it did. Coming back with my RV63, softening those edges up. And it takes a little bit of work. It's a pretty big jump. So lots of little circles going right over that seam again. Coming over to my second flower. And I didn't do a lot of light flicking, so it's a pretty heavy stroke that I'm trying to soften. But you can see I've got those bigger petals kind of softened in the center and easing up some of that darker color and fading it out with my RV63. Again, I'm kind of doing some of this on the fly and picking colors at the last second. So then I've got my colorless blender, and I'm going to start on these little teeny tiny petals on the flower, the inner ones, or where they overlap, I'm not sure, but I'm saying they're kind of inner petals and keeping those lighter. And then I'm going to come in on these two vases. I assume they're kind of like clear and that we can see in them that that's the stem going down the center, and so that it's a clear glass vase. So I use that colorless blender right down the center of both, and then I use a B000 and I flick in from the outer edges toward the center. Now, if your hand only flicks one direction, make sure to turn this upside down. Don't force it to try to flick the other way. I have done this enough now that my hand flicks in most directions, but that is not the usual thing. Most of the time, most people have to turn it upside down. Going back with my colorless blender one more time and lightening that center again. I do want it almost completely clear in the center, so I'm softening those fuzzy edges at the center. And then I only have a couple little things left to finish this up. I've got that bamboo, and I reached for the wrong marker there. I've got an E43 sitting on my table, so I'm going to start with that. And I realized as soon as I get going that I've gone to the wrong side of the bamboo. So I mark the other side, that right-hand side, which would be the darker since my light source is over to the left. This is, for me, this is where I didn't mark my page, or I didn't give myself a reminder of where that light source was coming from. And then I'm going to try this R00. It's just what's sitting on my table. I hadn't brought something over for the bamboo, and so I'm just experimenting and seeing what this looks like. And actually, I think it's doing what I want it to. I kind of wanted a creamy, earthy tone, and it's doing that. So it's going to work for what I wanted, and that is going to finish that up. So this is really the image. I've pretty much got it put together. I have a couple little corrections to make around the E, and then I'm going to start putting that into a card. Now I'm going to go ahead and flash forward, and I'll show you the card at the end, but I'm not going to show you the process. It's pretty simple layering that I've just stacked some elements and put that together. I just want to thank you, as usual, for coming and stopping by Copic in the Craft Room on YouTube. I really do appreciate those of you who stop in weekly. If you haven't had a chance, please make sure to like this channel and this video if you like this, and make a comment. If you've got questions about anything Copic, you're more than welcome to ask those in the comments. And stop by my blog, scrapweaver.com. Find out about some local and things going on around me, but also across the U.S. as I start teaching my Copic College weekends. Thank you for joining me this week, and thank you, Paper Smooches, for such a beautiful stamp set.